I used to swear my childhood smelled like lilacs and library glue. Lilacs, because Mom filled every vase in our split-level house with cuttings from the stubborn bushes that framed the porch. Glue, because I spent most afternoons hunched over science fair projects at the dining room table, while my older sister, Cassie, practiced pirouettes in the hallway mirror. From the outside, we looked like a brochure family for Midwestern decency. Dad's accounting job kept the lights on, Mom's nursing shifts paid for dance recitals, and a battered tin labeled Evan's College Fund sat on the top shelf of the hall closet. So sacred we knelt on a step stool just to add spare change. Cassie and I were only 3 years apart, but the distance felt continental. She moved through life like a marquee in lights, varsity cheer captain, prom queen runner-up, the girl who never had to buy her own fries at McDonald's because someone was always offering. I was the quieter constellation orbiting her glare. Honors track nerd, violin section backup. The kid teachers trusted to wipe the whiteboard after class. Still, there were summer nights when she'd sneak onto the roof with me, pass a contraband soda between us, and whisper that the stars spelled our names side by side. I believed her then. I believed everything. Our parents cultivated fairness the way gardeners prune roses. If Cassie got a $200 dress for winter formal, I got the same budget for my robotics camp. If I landed a trophy in math league, Mom clapped just as loudly as she did when Cassie nailed a flawless fouette. The system worked until it didn't. Looking back, the first hairline crack appeared at Cassie's 17th birthday dinner. Dad toasted her bright future. Mom cried into the cheesecake, and Cassie, glossy-eyed and restless, asked if we'd ever tasted salt water straight off the Pacific breeze. Imagine a wedding on a cliffside in Maui, she sighed, fingers tracing circles on her wineglass. We laughed because none of us even possessed passports then. But the idea lodged in her voice like a polished pebble, catching light every time she spoke. Senior year passed. I landed a partial scholarship to Northwestern's engineering program. Cassie graduated and leapt into a hospitality gig that paid just above minimum wage but granted her discounts at high-end resorts. Research, she called it. In family photos, her smile began to look rehearsed, tight at the edges, as though the world owed her a bigger stage. I kept adding my summer job paychecks to the tin, now swelled to nearly $38,000. A small fortune measured in cafeteria pizzas denied and birthday presents skipped. The night before I moved into the dorms, Cassie found me boxing my books. She hugged me so fiercely my ribs clicked, whispered, "You know I love you, right?" I laughed into her hair and told her to quit being dramatic. She pulled back, eyes shimmering with something I misread as nostalgia. In the hallway, the lilacs were wilting in their vase, petals browning at the edges, releasing a sickly sweet scent that made my stomach twist. I wish I'd paid more attention to that smell, because within weeks, everything, the fund, the fairness, and the last fragile threads between us, would snap, leaving me to free fall through a story nobody in our family brochure had ever rehearsed. Fall semester at Northwestern tasted like rain-soaked asphalt and vending machine coffee, but I was too wired on possibility to care. Every morning I rubbed the embossed E I'd scratched onto my dorm room key, E for Evan, E for escape, and marched to calculus believing persistence could outsing self-doubt. Then, one gray Tuesday in October, the bursar's office emailed, "Payment declined. Outstanding tuition, $18,642.42. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred into gnats. Impossible. Dad had transferred my college fund balance to the university weeks earlier. I'd watched him click, confirm. Heart jackhammering, I rang his cell between classes. No answer. At dinner break I tried Mom straight to voicemail. Panic grew legs. I sprinted to the bank's online portal and logged in to the joint savings account tied to my name. Balance: $4.17. The world fell silent, as if someone had vacuum-sealed the air. I called again. 5, 6, 10 times until Dad finally picked up, voice brittle. "Evan, we'll talk when you come home this weekend." "Dad, my tuition. It's complicated." Click. Complicated looked a lot like betrayal when I pulled into our driveway Friday night. The house shimmered with fairy light strands and rented florals. Cassie fluttered across the lawn in a white romper, clipboard in hand, barking instructions to a catering crew. A banner draped from the porch read, "Cassie and Logan's Island Forever," beneath a watercolor of palm trees. She caught my stare, froze. For a heartbeat her confidence slipped, revealing something wild and frightened. Then the mask snapped back. "Evan, you're early. Someone drained my college fund," I said, voice cracking. Mom appeared behind her, cheeks rouged, holding color swatches that matched the ocean in travel brochures. "Honey, let's not ruin your sister's rehearsal dinner." "Rehearsal dinner? You're not even getting married here." Cassie swallowed. "We leave for Oahu Monday. Destination packages require. My tuition requires actual money." I turned to Dad, who stood at the grill flipping shrimp skewers like he could sear guilt away. "Tell me this isn't real." Dad's shoulders collapsed inward. "Your sister needed a dream start," he murmured. "We always promised both our kids bright futures." I laughed, a sound like snapped strings. "So hers begins on a beach and mine ends in collections?" Neighbors angled closer, drawn to the rising static. Cassie's maid of honor, her best friend since kindergarten, whispered, "It's his savings, Cass." "Seriously?" Cassie's jaw clenched. "He can reapply for aid," she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Weddings are once in a lifetime." In that spotlight, the tin can from our hallway closet became a currency of humiliation. Guests shifted, pity mixing with polite horror, but not one intervened. I searched my parents' faces for rescue, found only tearful resignation in Mom's eyes and hollow apology in Dad's. Could I have defended myself? Maybe if I'd shouted louder, broken every wineglass on the buffet, forced them to see the ledger of sacrifices etched across my ribcage. Instead, shock glued my feet to the lawn. I tasted the lilac's funeral sweetness again and understood, with crystalline clarity, that fairness had been a bedtime story told to children too young to question arithmetic. I drove back to campus that night while Cassie's laughter drifted up into the autumn sky like party balloons, bright and unstoppable. By Monday morning, an Instagram flood of tropical selfies confirmed they'd boarded the plane. My future stuffed into their carry-ons like beach towels. Tuition notices morphed into warning letters. Student life acquaintances recoiled when rumor painted me as the kid too irresponsible to pay his bills. Trust wasn't just broken. It was repossessed, itemized, and shipped to Hawaii in matte gold luggage. And the first overdue balance call was already buzzing in my pocket, promising interest rates that could devour a lifetime. Winter came early that year, and I felt every degree of it because the dorm kicked me out the same week Lake Michigan coughed up its first crust of ice. A burly RA folded his arms while I stuffed my life into 3 garbage bags. He didn't look cruel, just inconvenienced the way you'd feel scraping gum off a shoe. I wanted to shout that I'd been wronged, but the truth sat heavy. The university had waited long enough. I bounced between couches for a month, classmates murmuring polite condolences until overdue notices became collection threats. Nobody wants debts echo inside their living room. I tried emergency grants, but the FAFSA portal might as well have displayed a laughing emoji. My credit score cratered. Banks saw a 20-year-old with a negative balance and tightened the noose of regretfully. I patched together graveyard shifts, mopping floors at a 24-hour grocery, unloading delivery trucks that smelled of rotting produce, tutoring freshman athletes who filed my lessons under background noise. I slept in the back seat of my '06 Corolla wedged between milk crates of textbooks I could no longer use. Nights blurred into condensation-frosted windows and the metallic taste of canned soup heated on a dollar store burner. Socially, my name grew radioactive. Friends who'd once shared ramen now forwarded thoughts and prayers, texts before ghosting. The engineering cohort posted group photos from lab. I zoomed in on empty seats and wondered whether mine had ever mattered. Each time Cassie uploaded another sunset-kissed wedding teaser, her white dress billowing against volcanic cliffs, guests lifted in champagne dazzle. Comments exploded with heart-eyed emojis. I scrolled until my thumbs numbed, searching for any hint of guilt in her smile. If it existed, the filter erased it. I called home twice. The first time, Mom answered, voice small, Sweetheart, understand. If we'd had another way. I asked her how the lilacs were doing. She cried and hung up. The second call went straight to voicemail. No one returned it. Isolation warped my thoughts into funhouse mirrors. I caught myself pacing the Riverwalk at 3 a.m., rehearsing arguments I'd never get to deliver. You stole my horizon. I hope the tide swallows your vows. One icy dawn, standing on the Wabash Avenue Bridge, I leaned over the rail and calculated the terminal velocity of a body versus the shock temperature of frigid water. Engineering brain, even now. What stopped me wasn't hope, but the cold logic that Cassie wouldn't lose a minute of her honeymoon over my obituary. She'd probably post a throwback with the caption, "Hug your siblings tighter today." Rock bottom didn't announce itself with sirens. It whispered. A snowstorm cloaked the city the night the Corolla's battery died. I sat in darkness hearing the wail of wind through door seals, realizing nobody knew where I was, and worse, that nobody would notice if morning found me frozen. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel and begged to God I wasn't sure I believed in. Give me one reason to stay alive. Just one. The answer arrived not as a revelation but as a knock on fogged glass. 3 sharp raps that shattered the silence. A tall figure in a yellow parka stood outside, breath spiraling like smoke. "You okay in there?" A woman's voice called. Behind her, the parking lot security lights haloed falling snow. In that instant, the world cracked open just wide enough for a sliver of warmth to slip through, hinting that this story hadn't finished writing me yet. The woman in the yellow parka turned out to be Dr. Marisol Reyes, though when she first coaxed me from the Corolla, she introduced herself simply as Mari. She was a trauma surgeon finishing a double shift at Northwestern Memorial. Exhaustion purpled the skin beneath her eyes, yet she still offered a styrofoam cup of hospital coffee like it was a chalice. I tried to refuse, embarrassed by the stale odor of sweat and engine oil that followed me, but my hands betrayed me. Shivering so hard the cup sloshed. She steadied my wrist with practiced gentleness. "Car battery?" she asked. "College fund?" I croaked, surprising us both. The story spilled out in ragged fragments. Sister, wedding, tuition, eviction, until my voice cracked like lake ice. Mari listened without flinching. Her gloved fingers pressed to her parka zipper as if to keep her own heart from escaping. When I finished, she touched the roof of the dead car. "Well, Evan, this vehicle is officially a popsicle. Come inside before you match it." Inside was a staff lounge smelling of antiseptic and burnt popcorn. She produced a blanket, a granola bar, and most precious silence that didn't judge. When sunrise brushed pale gold across the frost-fogged windows, she cleared her throat. "I can get your battery jumped, but that solves one night. What's your plan for the others?" I admitted I had none. Mari exhaled slowly, weighing a decision. "I rent the upstairs of a 2-flat in Pilsen. There's a spare room. It isn't charity. It's a trade." She explained that her teenage nephew Mateo had fallen behind in AP Physics. She'd been searching for a tutor who could demystify vectors and torque. "You help him pass the semester. I cover rent and utilities until you're on your feet." I opened my mouth to protest. She raised a palm. "Don't confuse opportunity with pity, Evan. I'm selfish. I want Mateo at MIT someday so he can design surgical nanobots that make my hands obsolete." That night, I moved into her apartment carrying everything I owned in 2 garbage bags. Mari's flat smelled like cumin and jasmine tea. Post-it notes littered the fridge, quotes from Camus, surgery schedules, grocery reminders. One yellow square read, "The wound is where the light enters you." I wasn't sure if it was for me or for her. Teaching Mateo forced structure back into my wrecked life. Each evening we spread textbooks across the kitchen table while Mari chopped cilantro for dinner, humming to old boleros. Mateo was whip-smart but tangled in decimal anxiety. By week 3 he'd gone from C- to solid B. Watching his face light up when a concept clicked reminded me of the thrill I used to feel solving circuit puzzles. Proof my brain hadn't rusted beyond salvage. Mari insisted I attend therapy through the hospital's resident wellness program. The counselor, Dr. Klein, looked like an aging folk singer and spoke in metaphors about rebuilding scaffolding before restoring stained glass windows. I unloaded years of middle child inferiority, The betrayal's razor edge. The river bridge night. Klein didn't offer quick absolution. He handed me cognitive tools and homework. List one thing you can control today. Sometimes the list was only eat breakfast. But a scaffold is still a scaffold. Money remained tight. I took daytime shifts at a small electronics repair shop run by a grizzled Korean War vet named Mr. Han, who paid me under the table to resolder cracked phone boards. My fingers remembered the language of circuits, and soon he let me tinker with vintage amps. The work smelled like flux and possibility. Mari's spare room evolved from a crash pad into a sanctuary. I patched the peeling wallpaper, built a desk from scrap lumber, taped my overdue tuition bill above it. Not as shame but as fuel. On weekends, Mari dragged me to dawn runs along the lakefront. We spoke little, our breaths crystallizing in tandem, but I began to notice the Chicago skyline no longer looked like a verdict. It looked like architecture waiting for blueprints. One snowy Sunday, after Mateo proudly waved his first A paper, Mari poured 2 glasses of Malbec and asked the question I'd avoided. "What do you want that isn't revenge?" The glass warmed between my palms. I confessed a half-remembered dream of designing affordable prosthetic limb controllers. My freshman project proposal still sat unread in some dean's inbox. She grinned. "Good. Dreams make better North Stars than grudges. Though," she added, eyes glittering, "a well-aimed constellation can light both paths." Her words planted a dangerous seed. Why choose between rebuilding and reckoning when I could do both? As winter thawed to slush, I scraped together freelance income, filed reinstatement paperwork with the university, and enrolled in night classes at a community college to prove academic momentum. Admissions would reassess in 1 year, just enough time to renovate my GPA and architect something more calculated. Because Cassie's grand Hawaiian spectacle had bought her 15 minutes of seaside triumph. But weddings end. Marriages settle into dawns and dishes, and Instagram filters can't hide overdue credit card statements from reality forever. Rumor said the newlyweds were already arguing about debt. A destination dream costs more than airfare. It accrues interest, both financial and karmic. So I drafted a plan not for violence but for precision. A guest list of 1, arriving at the next anniversary with an RSVP nobody expected. The thought didn't fill me with rage. It filled me with calm focus, the way aligning a circuit brings order to chaos. First, though, I had to finish becoming someone worth inviting anywhere again. 14 months after the night my iced-over Corolla became a coffin, I crossed the stage at Harold Washington Community College wearing a borrowed gown that smelled of dry cleaning solvent and second chances. My GPA, sparkling at 3.93, earned me a renewal interview at Northwestern. Mr. Han slipped a note in my tool bag. "The only thing stronger than solder is stubbornness. You've got both." Mari and Mateo screamed my name from the mezzanine, their cheers ricocheting off the vaulted ceiling like Pentecostal hallelujahs. In a single Polaroid Mateo snapped afterward, I'm standing between them, cap askew, sunlight catching the faint scar on my jaw. A reminder of winter's bite, visible proof that frost doesn't claim everyone it touches. By summer, I'd accepted a conditional engineering scholarship back at Northwestern. The department chair loved my prototype, a low-cost EMG sleeve that translated muscle twitches into servo motions, cheap enough for kids who couldn't afford bionic limbs. "You've turned pain into circuitry," he told me. I didn't correct him. Some poems write themselves. Success didn't erase the tuition bill tacked above my desk, but it muted its howl. I freelanced evenings, repaired stereos weekends, and paid down interest the way prisoners file through steel. Slow, steady, scorchingly intent. Therapy sessions shrank from weekly to monthly. Dr. Klein said I'd rebuilt my scaffolding. It was time to focus on stained glass. Then, in late August, a cream-bordered envelope slid through Mari's mail slot, addressed to me in looping calligraphy. Cassie plus Logan. 1-year vow-renewal celebration. September 18th, Starling Park Conservatory, formal attire. A sticky note from Mom was tucked inside. "Please come. Your sister isn't well. We need to talk." Beneath the plea lay another truth. Rumor said Logan's crypto venture had detonated, wedding debt metastasizing into lawsuits. My parents had refinanced the house, Foreclosure hovered like a tornado siren. They weren't inviting their prodigal son to celebrate love. They were courting a lifeline. I felt the old fury rise, hot and dizzy, but therapy had taught me to sit with rage until it named itself. What I wanted wasn't their ruin. I wanted accountability. And I wanted Cassie to face the one person she'd never dared steal from, her own reflection. So I RSVP'd attending +1. The conservatory on September 18th smelled of lily pollen and desperation. Fairy lights trembled above rented linen. Guests whispered about dwindling hors d'oeuvres and mysteriously missing bar tabs. Cassie stood beneath a trellis of wilted orchids, her designer gown slightly too tight, as if joy itself had shrunk in the wash. She spotted me and froze. Mom's eyes welled. Dad raised a tentative hand, but guilt bent his spine. My +1 stepped forward. A compact woman in a navy suit, clipboard pressed to her chest. "Cassiopeia Turner?" she asked, voice clear enough to slice crystal. Cassie blinked. "Yes." The woman extended a stamped envelope. "You've been served. Civil complaint. Conversion, educational theft, intentional infliction of financial harm. You have 30 days to respond." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Logan's face drained to chalk. Cassie's bouquet hit the marble with a dull thud, orchids scattering like broken promises. For a heartbeat I felt nothing. No triumph, no gloating. Only a profound, surgical stillness. This was not revenge. It was a mirror. Dad lurched forward. "Evan, son, we can settle this as a family." "Family?" I said, meeting his eyes. "Family pays its debts." I gestured to the process server, Ms. Angela Brooks, J.D., my pro bono advocate from the university's legal aid clinic. "Angela represents fairness. She's overdue." Mom sobbed, mascara pooling like ink. "We'll lose the house. Like I lost my future?" The words held no heat, just ledger sheet clarity. Mari stepped beside me, her presence a steady metronome. I heard murmurs, "Who is she?" But it didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet squeeze of her hand, signaling I could choose cruelty or closure. Cassie's shoulders crumpled. "Evan, I was stupid. Tell me how to fix this." I inhaled the humid, floral air, tasting the same lilac rot scent that once prefaced disaster. Therapy's homework flashed. "List one thing you can control today." I could control the next sentence. "I'll drop the suit," I said, "on 3 conditions. Full restitution with interest, a written apology addressed to Northwestern Scholarship Board, and proof you've enrolled in financial literacy counseling. You took my education. I'm giving you one." Cassie opened her mouth, then closed it, tears streaking foundation. Finally she nodded. Mari leaned in, whispering, "North Stars, not grudges, remember?" I answered just loud enough for Cassie to hear. "Sometimes they're both." And with that, I turned away from the trellis, leaving orchids and open mouths behind me, stepping into September sunlight that felt, for the first time in years, exactly like the future. 6 months after the vow-renewal showdown, an automatic transfer hit my account at 12:01 a.m., the first of 36 scheduled repayments from Cassie and Logan. The memo line read, "Principal plus 3%. I stared at the digits glowing in midnight blue and felt an unfamiliar sensation. Restitution that arrived on time. Cassie followed each payment with proof of completion certificates from her financial literacy course. Selfies beside a whiteboard packed with budgeting acronyms. The confidence in her eyes as shaky as a newborn foal's first steps. I didn't reply, but I saved every file. Paper trails matter. So does evidence that people can choose competence over chaos. My parents sold the house rather than refinance again. The split level that once smelled of lilacs and library glue now belongs to a couple with a rescue greyhound and solar panels on the roof. Mom mailed me a cardboard box of cuttings from the old bushes, wrapped in damp paper towels. The note inside simply said, "For whatever you're growing." I planted them in terracotta pots on Mari's balcony. Some mornings the scent drifts through the sliding door while I solder microcontrollers, and nostalgia pricks but no longer punctures. Therapy became quarterly checkups, then optional. Dr. Klein still reminds me that forgiveness is not binary. It's a sliding potentiometer you adjust as voltage changes. Some weeks I dial it up. I answer Cassie's texts, sending links to open-source budgeting apps or prosthetics fundraisers she can donate to. Other weeks, anniversary weeks, tuition deadline weeks, I turn the knob down and let silence do its work. Healing, I've learned, is allowed to oscillate so long as the waveform trends upward. Mateo aced his AP exams and started at MIT this fall, dorm room walls plastered with schematics for surgical nanobots exactly as Mari predicted. Mr. Hans sold the repair shop and retired to Florida. He mailed me his vintage oscilloscope, scrawling, "Keep the stubborn alive." Northwestern fast-tracked my patent application for the EMG sleeve, and a small startup in Evanston licensed the design. When the first child flexed his new plastic and aluminum fingers on a local news segment, I sat in the studio's green room sobbing into Mari's shoulder, understanding at last what it feels like to convert pain into propulsion. Do I forgive Cassie? On most days, yes, though forgiveness looks less like absolution and more like a mutual audit we agree to revisit quarterly. Do I trust her? Not yet. Trust requires compound interest. But I no longer crave her humiliation. Justice arrived dressed as accountability, and that's a garment that fits comfortably on us both. What did I learn? That families fracture along hairline cracks long before anyone hears the snap. That fairness is a ledger only children believe balances itself. And that rebuilding a life is less like phoenix fire and more like circuit repair. Steady hands, clean solder, patience while the alloy cools. Tonight, the lilacs on the balcony rustle in a warm Lake Michigan breeze. Inside, my prototype hums, a quiet rhythm matching the pulse in my wrist. I close my laptop, breathe in the floral sweetness that once foreshadowed ruin, and feel it recoded into promise. Betrayal stole my roadmap, but I built a compass, one calibrated not to where I was pushed, but to where I choose to go. And if tomorrow brings another storm, let it come. I've wired my future to light up in the dark.
If you made it this far, you're officially part of the drama. Subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done?